Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show will begin in 5 minutes. Let's make some noise! Let's make some noise!
Let's do this!
Hello, and a very good day to everyone and to you, Richie. How are you doing?
I'm okay. How you doing, Natalie?
I am great. Thank you so very much. It is wonderful to be back and to have everyone here tuning in while we are styling it in black and white. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, so we're talking about black and white photography today, so we thought we would also make the video black and white, and of course we're using Fujifilm cameras to not only capture the photos but to do this live stream. And so we just moved it to the Acros film simulation, so that we could appear in monochrome.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. I like it. I think it's quite flattering, actually. So that's very nice. We have Torsten tuning in. Hello, Torsten. How are you doing? It's great to
Hello.
have you here. And yeah, who else is here? Pop, hello. Tell us where you're watching from. There's Dan tuning in from Rochester. Very
Hey, Dan.
nice.
Yeah,
It's
it's really cool that we got people tuning in from all over the world. It's just amazing thing that we can get together. We can talk about cameras and film simulation recipes and Fujifilm and all that stuff.
Yes, it's absolutely wonderful. As always, to be here to connect with you all and to also hear from you guys what you are all thinking. We've asked in the pre show a bit of a question or made a statement as a quote about black and white photography. So we would love to hear your thoughts on that. And yeah, just to get us in the mood of black and white photography and what black and white photography is all about. Before we go into that, as always, it's great to hear where you're all tuning in from. We've got people from all over the world, and that really makes us feel, yeah, so great to connect to so many different places with so many different people. And yeah, and we want to make the circle bigger. We want to invite more people. So if you know someone who may also enjoy us talking about photography and straight out of camera JPEGs, then do invite them. And yeah, so that they can also join in and yeah, tell them all about it. We would love to have you all with us. And also don't forget that we're here to ask or answer rather questions. So if you have any burning questions, anything that you want to share with us, something that you want to ask us, something you're needing answers for, don't hesitate, don't hold back. Give us, drop it in the comments. You can precede it with a cue so that we know there's a question. If you need an answer for that, we will make time at some point during the show, maybe towards the end, where we will get to those questions. If we don't, we will definitely also answer them in the chat afterwards. So if you're maybe watching this as a recording, don't worry about it. We are looking at all the comments and we will definitely answer whatever questions you may have. So yeah, and there's Randy tuning in from California. That's nice. I'm sure he's nice and warm, just like you are, Richie, styling it again in a t-shirt while I'm sitting here with with cold feet and cold hands. Still very much winter here by us. But
Well, Randy's in Morro Bay. That's along the coast, so it could get chilly still on the from the ocean, and it's a beautiful place. I wish I was there right now. So I'm glad that Randy's tuning in, and we had Bjorn and Stephen Wells and Ivar that all are watching right now. So it's great to have you all here, and
Yes.
we're here for you. So as Natalie said, don't hesitate to type away, to ask any questions, to let us know your thoughts or your what's on your mind, what's burning inside of you that you just need to know the answer to. We would love to help you with that.
Yes, absolutely. Always here to help out if we can. But I think we should dive into our comment that we made earlier in the pre-show, where we thought we want to hear from you what you think about black and white photography. A very well-known photographer, Elliot Irwood, he said about black and white photography, or rather about photography, that a color is descriptive and black and white is interpretive. Now, we would love to hear your thoughts on that. If you think this holds truth, if you think there's a, that he hit the nail on the head, or if there's something else that you think when you hear black and white photography. Okay, so Torsten thinks it's colorless because there are no colors. Yeah, I guess that is true as well.
To an extent.
Nice.
Gray, I guess, technically is a color. And then you could tone your black and white. I used to give my black and white prints a bit of a sepia bath, more for the archival purposes of it, but it would give it a little bit of a warm tone.
Yes. So there's that. Is it interpretive? I think so. We will go into more details about that. Dan thinks, he's asking what the difference is between black and white and monochrome. Trust Dan to ask that question. Why am I
I think in photography, they're often it's used as synonyms. They mean the same thing. I guess if you want to get into the technical meaning of it, monochrome is like one tone, mono one. And black and white, obviously it insinuates there's two. There's black and there's white, but of course it's really black, white, and grays in between.
Yeah. So from what I picked up is that monochrome technically could be describing something other than just tones of grays, and black and white is all the different shades of gray. Yeah. So that's what I picked up. So monochrome could technically be a completely different color, not like you're saying sepia in itself is I guess also possibly a different color.
And you could even have like monochrome in color technically. For example, if you take like a red filter for black and white photography and you attach it to your lens and use your Fujifilm camera and you take a picture, you'll notice that everything is red. And so that technically is monochrome because it's all one tone,
Yes.
right? It's all red. But that's being a little technical, for most people, most purposes of photography, black and white and monochrome are synonyms and mean the same thing.
Yes, exactly. So we can be, but we don't need to be 100% technical. We want to indulge in the beautiful realm and world of black and white, monochrome, and all those kinds of types of photography today. And and I think we are well underway already talking about, the difference between all of this. And we have quite a few different things lined up for you that we want to talk about today. And that is just to get a better understanding of what black and white photography is, other than that there is no color in it. We want to share some tips about how you can improve your photography in black and white. And then obviously we'll, look at the recipes that we recommend for the month, and we will have a challenge waiting for you at the end of the show as well. So do stick around and, have a look and see. And at any point, if you feel like you want to comment or question something, then please drop us a comment and we will go and look at that. Are you ready?
Yes, let's do this.
All right, let's do this then. Let's jump right into the world of black and white photography. We have, like I said, a couple of steps that we want to run through with you. As always, in our theme show, we want to first talk about what the actual topic is, what black and white photography is. We are going to share some tips with you. Then we will recommend some recipes in this particular genre, and then give you a challenge so that you can participate throughout the month and share those images with us, so that in the Q&A show we can have a look at this and see how you fared with the recommended recipes. And also at the end of the show, we will have time to answer your questions. So let's first have a look. What is black and white photography? How can you improve your black and white photography? With a couple of tips that we'll run through. We will look at gear tips for black and white photography. This is a particular cool tip that I'm looking forward to discussing with Richie. And then we will share some food for thought as well. But first and foremost, let's unravel this. What is black and white photography? And I'm feeling very honored to share this with you guys because it is kind of like a quote, something my dad said to me when I first played around with the idea of diving into black and white photography. And I was still shooting on film, and I just bought some and came home and was carrying the bag and was holding the film in my hand, and my dad was like, "Oh, black and white photography, right? Well, now you'll have to learn how to see differently." And and he was very curious how I was going to tackle this. So I thought I'll share this with you because it kind of like feels that this is exactly what we're going to share today. So in the spirit, let's jump right in. We thought we'll look at different points, what a strong black and white photograph actually makes out. And we're starting out with an awesome photograph from Richie.
Yeah, and so we didn't want to just say, okay, black and white photography is shades of gray, it's black and it's white and in between. But to go into what actually makes a good black and white photo good, and kind of some of the philosophies or points about that could help you out. So I think black and white does really well for storytelling, for documenting, and that kind of thing. And so because you don't have color to guide the viewer through it, you have to use the gray elements that you have and start with a strong composition in order to tell a strong story.
Yes, absolutely. A good composition sprinkled with a good amount of aliens in it always helps for a strong black and white photograph. I love this image. I think it's so full of all sorts, and yes, a very strong composition indeed.
And I wonder what the alien's pointing at. Is it the mothership? Is that what he sees? Or
yeah, well, I guess we'll never know. But a strong composition is definitely helpful. I mean, it's always really important, but I think in black and white photography, you have really got the opportunity to make this work for a strong image because the focus is there. in the black and white, you can really, without any distractions, draw the viewer in with a strong composition. And this can be, maybe playing with symmetry also. But that's not all.
Yeah, I think contrast is very important with black and white, and especially we mentioned that you don't have colors to bring you in, to draw you in. So you're using how the highlights and shadows mixing together can draw you in. So on this picture here, you can see the points of highlight, the neon sign. It's against a dark building. The light illuminating that those posters or whatever that is there. The more light sky juxtaposed with the dark street stuff. So there's a lot of different elements of contrast to move you through this image, and it's just a matter of there being highlights near shadows.
Yeah, so I think good contrast makes the image a lot more dynamic. Excuse the pun, but it really helps in guiding the viewer through the image, I think. Just like also, for example, in this image, to place different objects in a scene where dark elements and light elements jump off each other, just to make it, more pleasing to the eye, more interesting.
Yeah,
So
and that's where your eye will go. When you look at a black and white picture, that's where your eye is going to immediately go first, is wherever the highest point of contrast is.
Yes, exactly. So that's definitely a great thing to keep in mind, and also to play around with, I guess.
Yeah, and when you don't have color and you're removing that element out of it, the other elements within the image kind of can be stronger in a sense. It's like, I think of like when somebody has, like, for example, a disability, let's say that they lost their eyesight. Well, sometimes their hearing will become stronger to compensate for that, right? So we don't have color in black and white photography, so the other elements can become stronger to compensate for that. And one of those things is mood. And I think you can use just the way the picture feels to really tell a strong message.
Yes, it's such a good point, Richie. It's definitely, I think when we're thinking of very strong emotional images, we often think of black and white, just because it makes it so raw. So I think moods definitely stand out really strongly in black and white photographs, and I think they focus us to what's really important in a picture. So
Yeah.
they bring across a message without the distraction of anything else. All right, but most importantly, I think, is good light.
Yeah, I remember a quote photography is painting with light, right? And so I remember hearing a long time ago that without light, there is no photograph, and without great light, there is no great photograph, right? So, so that's what we want to look for in color photography and black and white photography is opportunities of great lighting, and that could be very dramatic light. It could be a soft light. What defines great light can vary picture to picture and scene to scene, but really that's what you want to keep an eye out for, is whatever that great light is.
Yes, and I think, again, because it stands by itself, that light is so much more emphasized. I think, especially looking at this image, Richie, I could imagine that there was possibly, some kind of sunset colors or colors of the water in the background, and they would have they could have possibly distracted from
that's very true.
the rays
Yeah,
in the clouds. So I think great light is really emphasized.
I did take some color photos of this scene while I was there. I went back and forth between a few recipes, and the black and white ones were by far the strongest. Because, like you said, you start focusing on the colors, the blue, the little bit of kind of reddish pink in the sky, that kind of thing. But and not so much the layers of the hills and the rays coming down and that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's definitely something that focuses on different things rather than the colors, since they're not there. Maybe even clouds in the sky, something that you want to focus on. Really, black and white photography makes a feast of all of that's going on. So I think these are just a few pointers. That's obviously not an exhaustive list of what black and white photography is, but just to get the ball rolling, to get us into the mood, to see, what's the most important parts of black and white photography, to make those points. And I think there are also quite a few comments coming through, so I really enjoy that you guys are active there and chatting away. It's really nice to see. And and I think we should have a look at the tips that we want to give. So apart from just analyzing black and white photographs, we really want to show you how you can improve your black and white photography, especially, sharing recipes and shooting black and white throughout the month, that we can really practice different types. And, with the comment of my dad in the back of my mind also, that, we need to see how we can see light. So we want to share a couple of tips with you.
And so, we're here to help you guys out, and we're all kind of on this journey together of becoming better photographers. Natalie and myself as well, we're on the same road with you, and just trying to journey this together. And so we want to give you some tips, some tricks, or whatever it is to help you along the way. And so with black and white photography, a lot of it is learning to see the light. And we were having this discussion, Natalie and I, in the show prep, that, this picture, the scene was just a very ordinary scene. It's a blue house. It's a dark blue house with a little bit of a sky behind it. And there's nothing really extraordinary about it until you learn to see the light. And in this case, it was the sunlight, kind of a little bit low in the sky, not all the way down, but the bright sunlight is now reflecting off of those painted surfaces. And in color, it would just kind of look like bland, like the blues would become lighter than they really are and that kind of stuff. And maybe even over, you blow out the highlights or whatever. But in this, that reflected light from the sun is actually what draws you in, what creates that contrast. And then it's learning to see things like that, like the reflected light off of surfaces and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely important. And also, once you get into it, you will see moments like these, especially like where light's bouncing off surfaces, etc. And then these strong contrasts, which I think are just absolutely magical. And once you're in this, you'll see more and more of it, and it'll be really a lot of fun to capture those in beautiful black and white recipes. And just checking out what light does to different objects. I captured this the other day with in mind that I want to share this picture in today's show, because it's a really ordinary scene, but I really enjoy how the light reflects on that flower and gives a rim light to it, and that's what makes this image for me. So just watching what light does and then capturing that is really interesting, and I really love it, and it can be quite addictive.
It's a beautiful picture.
So look forward to a nice journey of discovering light.
And you know, a lot of times when we discussing black and white photography, we're talking about the light, the highlights, but the shadows are just as important, and how those shadows interplay with the highlights is kind of what you want to look for. So I like finding shadows specifically, not just finding highlights, but looking for shadow situations.
Yes, because where there's light, there's shadow.
Yeah,
So
or they can be. Yeah.
yeah, really nice. And yeah, it's a nice way to make a picture more powerful. So look out for these shadows, but also check out contrast. So high contrast scenes, like we were saying, what makes out a good black and white photograph. Look for those high contrasty scenes and try to capture them. And yeah, like juxtapose them and see what light does and how it portrays in a black and white photograph. And yeah, it'll add definitely to the mood of the picture.
And I like to look for things like shapes, you know, especially if it's like a repeated pattern. You know, if you have like the shape several times or at least a couple times. And so this you have, you know, a few different circles if you pay close attention, and then of course you have the triangles as well, but and the plus and all sorts of different shapes if you start you know, diving into it. But I find those things interesting, and I think they can really come out in a black and white picture.
Yeah, I absolutely love this image. This is so smart. How, you know, it's repeated in the shadows, so there's such a great dynamic to it, and it's in itself, it's so simple, yet it's very powerful. So you can look out for something. It doesn't have to be very complex to make a very interesting black and white photo. And also check out textures, because a black and white recipe will really bring out a lot of textures so nicely, especially this one here. And again, it's nothing out of the ordinary, but because it's, you know, the almost like the silvery quality of this image makes textures stand out even more.
And of course, you know, we kind of talked about you know, mood and stuff earlier, but if you can, I think black and white does especially well for portraying emotions. Not only because there's, I think, a little bit of nostalgia to it, but also because it takes away the elements that would distract from the emotions. So this is just this picture of my son Joshua, you know, playing in the pool. He's having a good time. You get the impression that he's very happy. It's a very light mood and happy emotions. But I think black and white does really well for that type of photography.
Yes, and he makes for a great model with a great sense of humor. We absolutely love it. This is really nice, and I love how the light reflects and silhouettes, not silhouettes, but gives him a bit of a rim, which makes it even better. And you couldn't have taken that shot a second later.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really great. And it's nice also to see happy moods. So not all black and white needs to be deep and somber. It can also be very happy.
Yep.
Not like this one, which is, you know, a little bit of a deeper emotion. yet still, look out for whatever emotions you want to capture, and have fun with that. At the same time, you can also play around with different energy, and that makes, like negative space creates tension in an image, and can therefore, in a black and white image, create a lot of interest. In this, more of a traditional negative space, or something that Richie captured, which has got more of a double meaning, we noticed.
Yeah, so and negative space is just kind of the space that is empty, that's outside of the subject, right? So the subject itself, I guess, would be the positive space, but then that other empty blank part of the image is important too, and it's often referred to as the negative space. So in this picture, the negative space is just the fairly nondescript blank wall that in and of itself isn't that interesting. And that's what most of the picture is. But on the left side, we have the window with the shades that are all broken up, and that's really the subject of it. And but it's the balance of the two that make this picture, and also, like you said, the double meaning of negative space. It has it's not inviting. It's not. This picture doesn't make you want to go inside this building and hang around for a while.
Yes, it's a negative space.
Yeah.
Yeah, so very, very smart and very well chosen for this particular point. What do you all guys think of those points? Is it making you think about what to improve, or pointers to think about when you take your pictures?
Before we move on, I just kind of wanted to share a little backstory with this picture too, because I found it interesting. I took this while on a photo tour with some other photographers, and we're all there and at this place, and I was the only one that saw this scene. I took the picture, and I look, and everybody else is like staring at me like, what's he see over there? But none of them were curious enough to come over and try to take a picture of it themselves. They were looking at me like I was crazy for trying to take a picture of this window and wall. But I think the lesson here is that you have to look for those places, those scenes, those sites that everybody else is overlooking. And I think that's where the great pictures sometimes are.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Little did these people know what you captured. So thank you so much for taking the picture and for sharing it with us. Also, this photograph. So we can also play around with what we call intentional camera movement.
Yeah, so this one I just slowed the shutter speed down. I don't remember exactly what it was, but like half a second or somewhere around that. Maybe it was like a quarter of a second or something like that. And I just used the natural shake of just being in a hurry to capture this. It's not just a blurry picture, but it conveys the sense of motion. Like everybody's moving. There's all this movement. It's almost like if you've ever seen a movie where the person is standing still and everything's just moving so quickly around them, and it's just a blur. So you get kind of that sense almost of like urgency or something like that.
Yeah, kind of urgency, but also maybe almost like a bit of a ghost-like kind of a feeling. So often you also, I think in movies they also use this technique to give you the illusion if someone was actually there or not or whatever. So it is another great way to add, again, more emotion or different kind of a perception, just something to make you think without distracting from anything else. So so I absolutely love it. It's a very dynamic image indeed.
Thank you.
there are different ways on how you can create camera movement or slow shutter speed in different ways. A lot of you would possibly think first and foremost of silky, creamy water with, maybe a jetty, a wooden jetty. You get a lot of those kinds of images, but you can also play around with the zoom lens, for example, which is how I took this image here, just to create more of interest and more dynamic picture. And so have fun with that as well, and exploring that and seeing what you can come up with.
And silhouettes work really well in black and white. The subject doesn't have to have all this fine detail. The silhouette could be just maximum black was the term we used to use in the film days. I don't know what you'd call it now, but yeah, it can be dark and featureless, and it can still be very dynamic. So I like, especially with people, I like to find silhouette situations.
Yeah, this is really cool, and just really also portrays, what's happening, and you can definitely see what's going on without seeing the detail of the person, which makes it which tells the story without giving the detail of the story, which is again a layer of making it more interesting. And at the same time, maybe something a little bit more different, but without seeing exactly who the people are and so forth. You kind of like get an idea of what is happening in the scene. So you don't always have to reveal everything. And black and white really lends itself to play around with that even more. So silhouettes are definitely also a great way to have fun with black and white photography. Yeah, and I think these are some of the tips. Again, it's not an exhaustive list, but it's definitely some. It should keep you busy if you keep those pointers in mind to to see what to capture and how to capture different scenes in black and white. And by no means this is everything. And if you have any other ideas, please do share them. We do, we can always expand on our list and give other people more pointers as we move along in the show, and as we then get closer towards sharing recipes and challenges. But this is what we think is kind of like also achievable, right? It's not really rocket science, but just some things to keep in mind to have some fun.
Yeah, and definitely don't think of like every element and try and include every element in one picture, but just maybe try silhouettes one day, and try capturing shadows another time, and capturing looking for dramatic highlights or textures another time, or things like that. Don't try and put it all into one picture, but try and think of like incorporating one element that we've talked about as you're taking a picture. And I hope that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, good point. We don't want to overwhelm you at all. But I think it's really important that you point that out, Richie. And I think it will take on its own dynamic, because once you see something that makes you take a picture, I think the more and more often you do it, the more you pick that up, and the more you like. It's what I've noticed as I was preparing also to take a couple of more sample shots for tonight, is that as I took more pictures and as I am in this black and white mood, I I can't help it. I see more and more of the light and shadows and so forth. And then I get an idea of another picture, and so it goes. I don't know how you take black and white photographs, Richie, if you go through quite a number of days or whatever, where you just take black and white or you switch back and forth.
Yeah, I generally like to have at least one black and white recipe. Usually it's Kodak Tri-X 400 in my camera as one of my C1 through C7s. Always have an option, but last year I had about 8 months where I had one of the cameras with just black and white recipes, and I have that right now actually going on with a different camera where I only have programmed to be black and white. And I think that's a fun way to do it because it forces you to not see in color and not be like, okay, this might look good in black and white, so I'm going to put the black and white recipe in there and see what happens. But it forces you to actually purposely look for the scenes in black and white.
So funny that you mentioned your black and white camera. Since we are at this point where we want to share some gear tips with you, and ta-da, here is Richie's black and white camera.
Yep. So, you know, that's what I did for about 8 months last year is I used 7 different black and white film simulation recipes in that in my Fujifilm X100V and just shot black and white with it for a little bit of the spring, the summer, and into the fall, and had a lot of fun with that. I loved it. I love black and white photography, so it worked out really well. And but what I would love is for Fujifilm to make a black and white camera, an X100 or X Pro Acros edition, make it black and white only, and of course, advantages to that are that you get a bump in resolution, bump in dynamic range, a bump in high ISO performance, and then of course you're restricted to black and white, which I love the idea of. So yeah, I hope they do it.
It would be absolutely phenomenal. A while back, it took me some time to get into understanding what the hype is all about, or why people, really want that. We know that Leica, for example, they also have black and white or monochrome cameras, and it's only been recently where I understand that if you really tune yourself into seeing black and white and really focus on that, it helps you to create better black and white photographs, or to see opportunities where you can take great black and white photographs. So by now I'm like, yeah, bring it on, Fujifilm, give us an Acros camera. So we will see what the future brings. But be that as it may, even if your camera could possibly also give you color recipes, you can still turn your camera into a pure black and white monochrome Acros camera. So we will see how you can possibly achieve that. But before we jump into that, we thought we give you some more food for thought. We give you some more inspiration, places or people you can look at, the work that they have created to, inspire you even further to create just some magical black and white stuff. And we can't not mention it in case you come across this term, so that you've heard it and you can say, yeah, it's fine, all good, I can move on. And that is the ominous zone system. that was invented by none other than Ansel Adams, who we see in this picture here in one of his great images. And I thought, let's just put it out there and let you know that it's kind of like, it comes from the film days. It points towards the fact that a good black and white photograph should have a representation of all the different shades of gray in one image. and should go through all the different zones, and should have a black point and should have a white point, in order to quote my husband. And that's kind of like what I think there's to it and what I wanted to mention. Did I leave anything out, Richie?
Yeah, we don't want to teach what the zone system is. And I mentioned before that in the pre-show that I took photography 101 in college, and all semester long we talked about the zone system. But the light bulb didn't come on until the end of the semester. They took the whole, 3 or 4 months or whatever it was to actually, understand what the zone system was and what it's talking about. But it's something that if you're interested in that, it's worth looking into and maybe reading an article or two about.
Yes, so we have a couple of links that we want to share with you in the comments regarding this. One of them is an article on Petapixel where this image was taken from, which is quite informative. And so if you want to deep dive into it, obviously the internet is full of good and
just a bit of trivia. Where this is it's called the Snake River Overlook. It was made famous by Ansel Adams in this picture, but it's also where the scene inside of the X on the Fuji X Weekly logo, that's where that was captured.
Yes, and while we're looking at this, we also obviously want to give this image a proper look, and want to start look at some grandmasters of black and white photography with Ansel Adams, because how could we not?
Yeah.
In more ways than just him being an influential black and white landscape photographer, but also the connection with Richie, and like he said, so much so that it's part of his logo. We can't not. So obviously a great image in more ways than one, and a lot of his work was very influential. So have a look, however old the photographs are, but have a look if you want to get some visual inspiration. But he's not the only one. There are a few that we want to highlight. Henri Cartier-Bresson is obviously another one, very well known. This is, I think, his most famous photograph that coined the decisive moment. For obvious
you can't get more
reasons.
decisive than that. Yeah.
And it's the reverse of or similar kind of an image of Josh at the swimming pool.
Yeah.
So so have a look at his work. There are lots of images online. There are videos online of his. So it's great to dive in to see what he did in his days. And we can't go through this without obviously mentioning a very influential woman in her time, even though it was the 20th century, which wasn't necessarily the easiest for women in this field. But Margaret Bourke-White was the first and part of the first photographers who were the main photographers for Life magazine. And I believe her image was the very first one that graced the first edition of that very magazine. So so she photographed lots of different subject matters, and is also very interesting. And this, amongst others, very inspiring photography to look at. And Edward Weston, if you haven't seen his work, this is paper number 30. And yeah, he took a lot of photographs of still life and played around and experimented with light. And if you're not familiar with that, do yourself a favor and have a look. Maybe it'll give you an inspiration to take your black and white photography into your kitchen.
Yeah, and he was good friends with Ansel Adams. They were in the same group together.
Yes. Yeah, most of these photographers are from the mid 20th century. They kind of like cross paths. But even though their photography is maybe a little bit older, but I do think that it's definitely worthwhile having a look at what they came up with. We're talking about inspiration, visual inspiration. I can never get enough
Yeah.
of looking at other people's work. Just like Sebastião Salgado, he photographed a lot of workers in different nations and how the working conditions are. So that was, for me, very moving to see his work. And this, is one of his images that stand out. And yeah, again, lots of very inspirational black and white photographs if, you get to travel to different parts of the world. So yeah, these are some photographers to look out for, but I can't go through this without mentioning movies. So if you're a regular on the show, you will know that I absolutely love movies, and Richie and I, we thought, let's not stop at photographs, but cinematography is also often a very good teacher for light, because we know how very intentional lighting is in movies and on movie sets. So we thought we mention, since this image of the cover of Belfast movie came out last year or 2 years ago. So even though today we have, all sorts of ways of making movies, people still choose to make a movie in black and white, which I think is very telling. And this movie in particular, I thought was extremely striking with the cinematography, and it's incredibly inspirational. So if you get the opportunity, do yourself a favor and watch it. Just like Roma, which is just a little bit older than that, I thought the scenes were just absolutely phenomenal. So if you really want to bathe in black and white photography, then jump into those kinds of scenes. And then something a little bit more historical, like Schindler's List, also a movie taken in black and white, or the movie of Sebastião Salgado's work, Salt of the Earth, is very, very interesting indeed. And may we not forget Finding Vivian Maier. I don't know if you guys, we've mentioned her work a couple of times before, I think especially also when we were talking about street photography. But this movie is very, very interesting. I absolutely loved it. I've watched it twice now. I find, finding out about her and her work absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, so if you're looking for inspiration, there's no shortage of it.
No, absolutely not. And just lastly, ending with Henri Cartier-Bresson, there is a couple of his stuff available even on YouTube if you follow our links. But if you have an opportunity to watch any of the interviews, I think it's great to sometimes dive into a little bit of history, and maybe it will, help you to really get into the mood for some good black and white photography. So this is kind of like wrapping up our tips and thoughts and looking at other people's photography. But at the end of the day, we're here to, improve our photography and to get shooting. So here's the point where we recommend our recipes for the month. And of course, we have 4 black and white recipes, finally, that we can share with you. And I think or hope that you also share with us that we've, looked carefully into what really reflects good black and white recipes. So, diving into the big box of tricks of Richie's, we came up with those ones. Do you think we've got a good selection here, Richie?
Yes, absolutely. And I don't want to take all the credit for this. Anders Lindborg, who we had as a guest, was last season, I think. He had a big hand in these recipes. So give credit where credit is due. He is really the black and white master of Fujifilm cameras and recipes. And if you haven't seen that episode, or specifically we talked about Kodak Trax 400, make sure you go back and watch that one.
Yes, definitely go back in there and also have a listen to what Anders had to say about creating black and white photographs. It was a great conversation we had with him. I really enjoyed that we looked across all the different kinds of films that were available, and from Kodak, obviously we couldn't do without Ilford, and Kodak Tri-X 400, iconic, and no secret that Richie and I both absolutely love it. Mm-hmm. And then we opted for Acros as the 4th recipe, not only the film simulation, but it's actually a recipe, and it's Richie's very first recipe that he ever published on Fuji X Weekly. So I thought that was we couldn't not, and it's compatible with all the different cameras. So no matter what you're shooting on, you will be able to enjoy this one.
Yeah, it was 6 years ago this month, I believe, when that was published.
Kind of like an anniversary celebration, which I think is really cool to do this with black and white, and on top of that with Acros. Very special indeed. And and very excited to start this journey with all of you. And let's just have a look at what all the different recipes kind of like mean. We've got, as always, some sample images to illustrate what kind of results you can expect with those recipes. Let's start with Kodak T-Max P3200.
Yep, and this one, the film itself is actually an ISO 800 film, I believe, right? Am I correct on that? Or is it ISO 400? I forget. But it would be pushed by the lab to ISO 3200 unless you told them otherwise. And you can get like very different results from it depending on how you shoot it and have the lab develop it. And the film simulation recipe reflects that. And basically, the higher the ISO, the more it would be like pushing it. And I love the way that this one looks. It's the only one of these recipes that has toning in it. So it's got a little bit of color. It's hard to tell, but it's a very beautiful recipe.
I absolutely loved it from the moment you published it. It's relatively new in the collection, and I used it and I immediately loved it. It's really, really wonderful. It renders absolutely stunning colors, and yes, it's got a bit of toning. So when you compare the results of the 4 different recipes, they're all ever so slightly different, and this one definitely has this special tone in it. And you can look forward to creating some nice images with this one, definitely. But that's not the only one, obviously. Ilford is also absolutely stunning.
Yeah, this recipe, if the light is right, it just you can't beat it. It's just absolutely beautiful. But as you can see in the water with this waterfall picture, is it a lot of other recipes wouldn't have worked nearly so well in this scenario, but Ilford HP5 plus 400 was the perfect choice, and thankfully that's what I had programmed in the camera. So
Yes, I absolutely love this image. I feel like you can feel this image and the reflections on the moss on the stone here in the front is absolutely phenomenal, and it's got such an analog feel to it. It's really very special, and I also enjoyed shooting with it. And um, it's it's quite forgiving in the highlights, I think. So, yeah, a really nice recipe to play around with as well.
and of
And then
course
obviously
my
our
favorite Kodak Trax 400. It's my go-to black and white, and yeah, this was recently, not too long ago, captured at the beach, and just an ordinary scene of the kids chase, playing chase with the waves and stuff. But the recipe adds this drama to it that wouldn't have come out with a lot of other, definitely not with color. But a lot of recipes wouldn't have done so well with it. But Kodak Trax 400 is absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, it's so dramatic and so gritty, and really gives you this extremely analog feel. I mean, it's got quite a lot of grain, so depending on what it is that you shoot, you will definitely notice that. But I absolutely love it, and I'm sure you will love it too. It gives you lots of really nice contrast, and full deep blacks. Lots of fun, to shoot, definitely.
But let's not forget the original. It's a really good recipe too, and still a lot of people using it, and which is, I love to see. And this is in Seattle at the famous fish market, and you can use it in a lot of scenarios and get really good results.
Yes, I apart from the fact that this image, the capture itself is very cool. I love the scene. It's super dynamic, and yeah, pure food fish. No, it's really cool. And across in itself, the film simulation as it is in your camera already is really great when it comes to grain and the way it adjusts in the different ISO. It actually changes the grain already in itself. So that's a really nice thing to play around with.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the only film simulation that does that.
Yeah. So have a try and keep that in the back of your mind when you're playing with different ISO, which you will if you follow our challenge. Hint, hint. Yeah, so definitely indulge in Acros. It's absolutely stunning. So these are our 4 candidates for the month. Enjoy them. They are, from the Kodak T-Max 3200, which is, super versatile and has a really awesome tone to it.
Yeah, and even though these are all black and white film simulation recipes, I think you're going to find that each of them produces a little bit different of a look. They're not going to look identical to each other, and you'll find that you'll prefer some of them in certain situations, and others of them in other situations. For example, the Ilford HP5 Plus 400 has more of a medium contrast with those soft highlights. So you may find it to be too flat in low contrast light, or for example, the Kodak Tri-X 400, you might find that to be too contrasty sometimes. Just you have to play around with it and try all four of them if you can, if your camera is able to, and compare them to each other and see which ones you like and which type of light.
Yeah, so I think they all have the right to be here, and they, render ever so slightly differently. And this is why we give you these markers. I think we have been quite lucky in selecting, I don't know if it's lucky or thoughtful in selecting the recipes that really are very versatile with the different cameras. So no matter what you shoot, you will definitely be able to have a variety of recipes at your disposal. So,
and you can find these on FujiXweekly.com and on the Fuji X Weekly app. So if you're not sure where these are located, that's where you go. FujiXweekly.com. All my recipes are there. Fuji X Weekly app. Take it with you on the go.
Yes. And we will share the links to the recipes also on the sooc.live website, where we will list everything, including the challenge, etc. So if you are not 100% sure or want to go back to it, that's a good resource also to get all the information from. But I've mentioned this challenge now a couple of times, and I think we should reveal what we have thought of to, to up your game a little bit more. And apart from shooting the recipes, which we obviously invite you to do at, your heart's content, we have a couple of other challenges that you can take up and shoot with any of the recipes. And that is, like we shared so many different examples. So focus on shadows, shapes, or patterns, and see and share with us what you come up with and what you find. And then a special challenge. Richie, do you want to explain what we want people to do with this third one?
Yeah, so the third challenge, well, so to go back, the first thing we're challenging you to do is to shoot with 1, 2, 3, or all 4 of those film simulation recipes, and that's the base level challenge. And then if you're looking for a little more, second level challenge is to photograph shadows, shapes, or patterns and include those in your images. And then the expert level challenge, if you're filling up to it, as we would love to challenge you to shoot at least some of your pictures at ISO 6400 or ISO 12800 and push that ISO up. For some of you, that's going to be really uncomfortable. Some of you already do that, and it's second nature, and you won't think twice about it. But for some of you, I get people like fairly regularly ask like, why is DR400 not available on their camera? And then I say, well, you got to increase the ISO to a little bit, and that it makes them uncomfortable. They don't want to go to ISO 6400, ISO 800 because that's really high ISO. But especially with black and white on your Fujifilm cameras, you get beautiful results. You get lovely results at ISO 6400, ISO 12800. And the other thing that it does is it's very difficult to use that high of ISO in daylight. So that also forces you to, a lot of times we want to put our lens at f2 and, or, whatever, the largest aperture is, and get that shallow depth of field. But it challenges you, it kind of forces you to use a larger or smaller aperture to get a larger depth of field. And that is a kind of a secondary part to the challenge is how using high ISOs forces you to change your photography a little bit in daylight.
Yes, so it's all about pushing you out of your comfort zone and try and experiment and experience different ways of shooting. And shooting on high ISO is definitely welcome. The first reason why we want you to experiment with it is because the way the recipes are made, they get even better. Some of them enjoy a very high ISO. I guess that's also got to do with when they're based on acros, and acros shines or becomes even more film and analog like on higher ISO. So there's a heck of a lot going on, and that's why we want you to experiment with it and see how you enjoy it, and compare it with other ways of taking photographs, and share them with us. So when you do share them for the next show, then let us know either in the file name, or share a document with us where you let us know what your findings were, or what photographs were taken at what settings, so that we can then share them accordingly. And speaking of sharing, as always, use this link to share and upload your images with us. You have until the 23rd of August, so that's a good 3 weeks that you can shoot with all those different recipes. And like I said, let us know with the file name what recipes you used and what settings. And if you have anything else that you want to share with us, you can add a document or some other notes in the uploads as well. And we look forward to seeing what you come up with and what you create over these next couple of weeks. And this brings us to the Q&A section. So we have some more time now to answer some questions if there are, and just to have a bit more of a conversation around this. What you think of what we shared with you, the different inspirations. Do you also like these kinds of photographers, for example? What kind of photographers do you turn to for inspiration? Are there any movies that you like? What do you do to find some different ways of taking photographs? And what do you think of the recipes? Are you looking forward to that? What do you think of our challenge? I have so many questions. Do you shoot high ISO? What do you think of high ISO? Let us know.
Yeah, Natalie's got all the questions. What are your guys' questions? Because this is our opportunity to answer them. We also have usually a more lengthy Q&A session in the follow-up episode. So if you're shy and don't want to ask it now, you can always do it then. But this is your opportunity, and so let us know what you think, and we'll talk about it.
Yes, there's definitely lots of more opportunity to talk about. Let's have a look at some of the comments that came through while we were looking at all the different samples. I think this is a really good point that Björn's making, to use black and white when the color is a distraction. I think that is kind of like what we were talking about also, and what makes for a good photograph, that we're looking at different aspects of a photo other than the color of it. So thank you for that.
And I remember learning a long time ago that if color is an essential element to the picture, then you need to photograph it in color. And if it's not, then you should photograph it in black and white.
Yes, absolutely. Good point. And Stephen Wells loves black and white. When he shoots his surf photography, especially in winter when the water and snow lack any pop of colors but contain tons of contrast. Yes, that sounds like a really good idea, and I look forward to lots of black and white surf photographs.
Now you got to think about this for a second. How hardcore do those surfers have to be surfing in Maine in the winter? Like that, I don't surf, but I just imagine that water is super frigid.
Good point, actually. I wasn't even thinking about that. Well, it's winter here, and I'm cold enough already as it is. There's no ways I would be getting in the water. So, yeah. So even more to look forward to. But I know that that Stephen shared some of his surf images throughout the last winter as well. So yeah, they make them strong up there.
Apparently so.
Yes. And I'm glad that we've got you on board, Enrico. We're looking forward to lots of black and white images from you as well. And yeah, it's been a long time coming. I think we've been talking about this for a while, just making a show totally black and white. And we're finally here, and we look forward to the whole process. Björn's asking a question. Thank you. He's asking, who are your favorite black and white photographers? So his are Daido Moriyama. He shoots in very harsh, strong contrast. Peter Lindbergh was a fashion photographer. And Stefan van Vleteren is from Belgium. So yeah, so what are your favorite photographers? Who do you look at for some inspiration, or who's on your short list of what you watch out for? Share with us. We'd love to know. I'd love to know what else I can look at for some inspo for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so, of course, for me, Ansel Adams is always at the top of the list. I love, I always loved his black and white photography. I don't know. Trying to think of top three. Weston. I always think of his. There's a picture of his where it's not peppers, but it's a very ordinary, like suburban neighborhood, and it's got this white fence. And the house in the background, if I remember correctly, is kind of a darker color, or it's black and white. It's darker gray, but it was just such a dramatic picture of such an ordinary scene that I always think of that.
Okay, nice. We've got some more people bringing in their favorite photographers. Salgado and Kenna. Is what Enrico's thinking. So I'm glad you share my inspiration there, Enrico. And what else have we got in the comments? Stephen says that citizen photographer Vivian Mayer and Gordon Parks are, I think, his favorite movies to watch. And yes, it's definitely, Vivian Mayer is spectacular. If you have not watched it, do yourself a favor and have a look at it. It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting indeed. Yes, we do, Dan.
That
would
100%
be
agree.
Spectacular. Well, you never know. We will see what the future holds. But up until then, we will make our own.
Yeah, you can use your X Pro 3 or something and load it with 7 monochrome,
Yes.
Black and white recipes.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there are 4 already, and there is no shortage. And filtering for black and white on the Fuji X Weekly app gives you a lot more options to choose from. So what have we got here? Simon says, flowers. Often I think why the hell would I turn that beautiful flower into a black and white subject? But once you do, you realize the tons of contrast and shapes flowers offer perfect for black and white photography. Yes, I couldn't agree more. I absolutely love it too, because yes, textures are what it's all about. Nice recap of what we've been sharing. And yeah, searching for brightness in more than one way, maybe.
Yeah.
It's definitely a good idea. Absolutely. Thank you, guys. You're on fire again today. It's really nice to see you all commenting so very nicely. Eva says
Well, it may
it.
have been about our intentional movement pictures, I think.
Yes, yeah, I think so too. Yes, it's a great way to explore and experiment. So do give it a try, absolutely. And yeah, if all else fails, turn it into black and white. Yes, yes, you may, but hopefully we have given you enough reasons to start out with black and white to begin with. Yeah, so there have been a couple more comments. Björn says, where you can see and frame in black and white really have helped a lot, black and white photography. Yes, absolutely. I shared with Richie yesterday that that I picked up a friend's camera that was in black and white, and that was a couple of years ago. I think it's quite a few years ago already, where I was very unfamiliar with a camera being set up in black and white. And I picked it up and I looked through it and it was in black and white. And I'm like, what are you doing? Why is this black and white? Almost like you're cheating. But I've obviously come a very long way since then. And it is really very helpful to see, and your camera is helping you to find those sweet moments that turn, into really stunning black and white photographs. So look forward to that, and I'm hoping, that you will enjoy the process as well.
Yeah, what you see is what you get is great,
Yeah, absolutely. And Simon says, what we are on. Yeah. Are you on a red filter, Richie?
No, it's just the regular. But I didn't change the other settings, so it's whatever the other settings were for video. I think it was Eterna, so I had it on, and then I just switched it over. So I couldn't tell you what the highlight and shadow and all that stuff are set to.
Yeah. Well, I know that I'm simply on across. I don't, no green, no red for me. But speaking of which, we have Björn who mentioned that, and we wanted to still speak about it as well. But we got so excited about all the different recipes that we didn't. And that was the color filters. Björn did mention that we didn't really speak about that. And obviously they played a huge role in black and white photography. Originally, filters that you actually add to your lens, but nowadays different filters that you choose to add in addition to acros, yellow, green, or red. The same with monochrome. So
yeah, so yeah, with black and white only camera that we were talking about, Fujifilm should make. You could actually use real black and white film filters that you would screw onto the lens, and some common ones are red, orange, yellow, green, blue. Maybe I'm missing one, but I think those are the most common. But you can't do that with your Fujifilm camera that is meant for color photography. It just doesn't work that way. So Fujifilm has included 3 electronic filters. They're not actual filters, but they simulate using a filter, and they have Y that's supposed to mimic using a yellow filter, red R, which is supposed to mimic using a red filter, although I personally find that to be more like an orange filter. And then G for green. And we don't have a lot of time to really talk about what each of those does. I did write an article about it a while back, and we can link to that, I think. Not that we haven't overloaded you with links already, but yeah, definitely check out that article. I think a lot of the recipes have a link to it. A lot of the black and white recipes have a link to that article in them. So look for that, and it kind of explains what all of that means and why you might pick plus Y or plus R or plus G instead of using it without. But generally speaking, in my preference, if it's a landscape with blue sky, I love plus R. Plus G does really well sometimes for uh, like land, if you're doing flowers or a lot of greenery, or even portraits of people if you want it to be really dramatic. So
Yes, it's a good thing to try them out, and I think you also welcome people with the different recipes that they change those film simulation to add those filters in and to see what the differences are. So don't stop with the straightforward settings, and as always also check out the articles that Richie writes to each of the recipes, because he also gives you pointers as to what you can add and season in to your liking, in addition to the settings that are given in the app.
yep.
And go to the link in the comments to read all about that article as well. Björn's on fire today. He is saying another 2 great black and white photographers. There's a great documentary about Gordon Parks, Choice of Weapons. It's highly recommended. I will look for it and watch it. Thank you, Björn. And I hope you all find it also interesting and tune in. Okay, they're clearly having a conversation about this.
That's great, though. That's really great.
I love it. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really good. And Diane is saying that HP5 is a nice all-round starting point since it has clarity 0, it's fast, and DR400, so you can really reprocess it to any other recipe. It's a very good point. Thank you for pointing that out to us. Yes, and Simon says, thank you, Dan. As do all of us. Yeah, so, and like we'd said, before I go there, Scott Paul says, why do you feel Ilford was the right black and white for the waterfall? So
I think that it has the right amount of contrast to set the tone for that scene. If it had been Tri-X, for example, you would have really deep blacks. It would have been overly dramatic, and with this one, you see the softness of the light on the moss. It's really just more lovely tones. Yeah, and it also would be easy to on some black and white recipes to blow out the white on the waterfall, and then you start losing the details in the texture there. So yeah, that's what I would say. It was for the light that was there. If I had used almost any other recipe, it just wouldn't have looked as good.
Yeah, well, it looks like a great choice to me indeed. Thank you for letting us go back to that image, Scott. Mm-hmm. And then we have a question from Eva. He's asking if Kodak P3200 is compatible with Trans 3 cameras. So I think this is the only one that isn't.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's got toning in it, right?
Yep. So X-Trans 3 doesn't have toning, and even the XT3 and XT30 have toning, but it's a different toning. Those two cameras, Fujifilm set it up differently. So it has to be X Pro 3 or newer.
Yeah. And it's the only recipe, though, that isn't compatible with X-Trans 3. All the other 3 recipes that we recommended are compatible. So
yeah, and it says in the recipe article, how to make it compatible for the other recipes.
Yes. So yeah. So hopefully there will be still enough choices for you out there, and lots of inspiration to go to. And I kind of have the feeling that the comments have died down a little bit and that we have hopefully answered all your questions. Like I said earlier, if you're watching this as a recording, you're more than welcome to still ask us questions in the comments. We will definitely answer them at a later stage. And if you're watching now and you think of something else to ask us later, please don't hold back either. We're always happy to answer any of your questions.
Or make a note of it, and you can ask it in the Q&A show that's coming up as well.
Right on point, Richie. It is coming up. We have 3 weeks to shoot these beautiful black and white recipes and to try out all the pointers. And then we will see you all again on Friday, the 25th of August. Yes, it'll be Friday, the 25th of August. We are going 1 day longer. So please do make note in your diaries that the next show is not a Thursday, but a Friday. And it's Friday, the 25th of August, when we will see you again. And you have until Wednesday, the 23rd of August, to send us all your pictures to share with us. And we hope that you have lots of time to go out there and create awesome black and white images in all sorts of different recipes. And we can't wait to be back here again and to share all of that. If you want to make sure that you don't miss out on any of the upcoming shows and get notifications when something new happens, please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. It will help us greatly. And we love your support. And while you're at it, share this channel and this show maybe with other like-minded photographers, and invite them to watch. And we hope to grow and reach more people and have more conversations around all of this.
The more the merrier.
Yes, the more the merrier. And this brings us to the end of the show. It's been really great. I hope that you got some inspiration from us sharing all this, and that you enjoyed this. We definitely enjoyed all your input. It's been phenomenal to connect with you again. Thank you so much for tuning in, as always, and also thanks to all the new people who've been tuning in. It's been absolutely wonderful to have you here. We can't wait to do it again. It's time to bring it to an end. I'm quite proud of us. We haven't done too badly when it comes to time, which is always a challenge for us, but we're always having so much fun.
Yeah, we had a lot to talk about, and then also all the comments and questions and everything, your guys' interactions. That was really great, and just love seeing you guys chatting with each other and making all these great points, and the interactions have been wonderful, and that's why we're here, and just happy to see it. But it is time to say goodbye. So thank you for tuning in, and thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you in 3 weeks.
Yes, it's been phenomenal. Thank you so much, Richie, for all your time and your input, and for giving us beautiful black and white recipes that we can shoot with over the next couple of days and weeks. Thanks to everyone who's tuned in, for watching, for all your support. It's been absolutely phenomenal. We couldn't do this without you, and we look forward to do it again in a couple of weeks' time. Until then, you have yourselves a wonderful day further, wherever you're watching from. Look after yourselves and take amazing black and white photos. See you in 3 weeks' time.
Bye.
Good night, and thank you for watching. We hope you enjoy the show.